welcome to another Friday Waffle. Yep, it's that time again. It's almost the weekend. Woohoo! I've got a little list here of a few bits and bobs I want to talk to you about. I don't think it's going to be a long video, but then every time I say that it always runs on and on and on and on and on. So I trust you've all had a good week. I've had not a bad week. Gaming wise, I've not been playing many other games other than my Mamemeister. As you probably know, anyone that watches my videos will be aware that I got my new Mamemeister. I got it, when did I get it? Just over a week ago. Now, being a retro gamer, which I'm sure 99% of you will appreciate or can relate to, if you've ever been into emulators, playing games on your PC through emulation, we're never happy with the way things are. We're always trying to tweak things to the nth degree, and it's been exactly the same for myself with the Mamemeister. I mean, the actual cab itself is brilliant, really good, absolutely rock solid. But primarily I got the Mamemeister. Now the information's in the last phrase I said, Mamemeister. I got it to play Mame, which, as you know, is arcade games. I mean, it's primarily been bought to be able to play arcade games, you know, the way they should have been played, i.e. with trackballs, twin joysticks, etc. But because I've been using it's a little Acer PC thing, that's what I put inside the Mamemeister. It has also got about another, I don't know, 20 systems, maybe not quite as many as 20 systems already configured. So I've spent the last 7 days basically getting all the emulators set up properly. And again, as some of you can probably appreciate, you know, emulators like the Spectrum, Commodore 64, etc., they had keyboards, so there's always going to be games, especially your kind of hacked games, when you get like a little intro with music, etc. They're always going to want you to press like run stop or backspace or spacebar, whatever. Now, obviously, running these on a cab, you know, joysticks and buttons are basically key presses. So I've got 2 joysticks and I've got 15 buttons. Now they're all mapped to your usual, your up down arrows, your Q, your Z's, whatever, different letters. So you're not going to have a button for every single button, if that makes any sense. So when you're playing a Commodore 64 game, I've managed to get it to load okay, but the problem being is it takes bloody ages. I mean, if you had a keyboard handy, you can press like Alt W, which will obviously warp. It will increase the speed tenfold and load the game really quickly. But it's virtually impossible to you know, to try and map these to the keyboard. What I've been looking for actually is what I've been wanting is a piece of software that will, instead of pressing like Alt and W, you can map that to a single button. Now I know you get something called Joy to Key, which basically allows you to map keyboards to a joystick, which is particularly good for stuff like your Spectrum. You know, you can basically map the letter Q to be up on the joystick, B could be down the joystick, whatever. But what I need is a piece of software that will allow me to map, like, you know, 2 keys, Alt and W, to a single key, which I can then define as one of my joystick, one of my sort of keys in the cab. I've tried about half a dozen bits of software, and so far I've not found anything that actually does what I'm looking for. If any of you guys know of any piece of software that would work, please let me know. I mean, I've tried various ones, Hotkey, Key Mapper, Christ knows how many. Some of them you can, in fact one of them even went to the extent of bloody changing the sort of config file in the system in Windows. So when I eventually rebooted my computer, I was trying to get the exclamation mark and it was coming up with a $sign. So I quickly removed that and you know, put it back to default. But yeah, what I want is just a little bit of software that I can run when I start the C64 emulator. It will run and it will allow me to map like 2 buttons onto one of the joystick, one of my cab buttons. If any of you guys know of anything that would help me, please let me know. Yeah, so anyway, I've been configuring the Mamemeister. Now, one of the things, if you're into your Mame, there's, in some of the later versions of Mame, there's a thing called, is it HSL or something like that, HSDL, whatever it is, I can't remember exactly. but it's an option you can tick, and what it allows you to do is basically configure the screen to look exactly like the arcade games. One of the biggest flaws on emulation, especially when you come to play things on like LCD TVs, monitors, etc., the graphics just look too good. As you know, back in the day, it was old CRT monitors or screens, and they tend to have scan lines, and they weren't crystal clear. Now this thing in the MAME, this HSL, whatever the hell it's called, option, you can tick that, and you can basically use, you can adjust about, I don't know, 20-30 different options. Now I've seen a few YouTube videos of guys that have actually configured it, and I have to say it looks a dog's bollocks. It looks really, really smart. It's not sharp. It looks just like, it's got, you know, just like what it should do in a CRT monitor. It's got the scan lines. You can even have the screen kind of beveling out the way or beveling in the way slightly. It looks really, really cool. Now sadly I tried it on my cab, but the PC I've got, it's either not powerful enough to run it with these things, or else it's maybe got old drivers. But I mean, I'm using, it's a sort of shrunk down version of XP that I'm using for the MAME cab. So possibly the correct drivers it might be is DirectX, whatever it isn't installed. But I don't want to sort of mess about too much and screw things up. As you're, again, being an emulator person, you'll probably know you can end up screwing things up with sort of trying to adjust things too much. So I've had to just leave the scan lines thing alone, unfortunately, but still cracking. One of the other things which you can do with this HSL thing in MAME is it allows you, I mean, anybody that's played MAME and tried like the vector games, they don't look that great. I mean, they look alright, but compared to the proper vector displays, you know, they don't, the proper vector displays, the lines are really glow, they pulsate. When you move, you almost get like a slight kind of trail. You know, that was just one of the characteristics of the vector monitors. Now this HSL thing, again, that's in MAME, if you switch that on and play any vector game, Star Wars, Asteroids, Tempest, whatever, it looks bloody gorgeous. It looks absolutely stunning. So if you've got a decent PC and you're running MAME, get yourself one of the latest versions of MAME and go to its options, advanced I think it is, and tick the wee it's not HSL, it's something like that, it's like 3 letters, HDSL or some damn thing it's called. Tick the box, then try Star Wars, and I'll promise you it'll blow your socks off. It looks absolutely gorgeous. But again, yeah, unfortunately my PC's not powerful enough to run it, so tough tits for me. Yeah, that one. And the last thing, which I've got a good mate, Ian, who's one of the retro PC guys. Ian came across to the house 2 or 3 days ago, and what he did was, as you probably know, if you've been into MAME for a long time like myself, the early versions of MAME supported high score, which basically meant when you got a high score, it would automatically save it. So when you rebooted the machine, played the game, the high score was still there. In later versions, in fact probably any version that's been made in the last, I don't know, probably 5, 6, 7 years maybe, that functionality has been done away with. Now apparently the reason being is the guys who write MAME, the developers who are actually in charge of the MAME project, they claim they don't make MAME for people to play games. That's apparently a nice after effect, or side effect I should say. It's a nice side effect that you can play the games. What they've actually set out to do is to preserve the code as accurately as possible, and that means flaws and all. So what you kind of tend to find with MAME is some games, you know, the early versions of MAME, it would play a game really, really well. Then as more recent versions of MAME came out, the games were broken, they didn't work as well, and I couldn't understand why they would want to do that, but apparently it's because they want to emulate the code as accurately as possible, and if it means that some games won't be playable, then that's the kind of route they're going down. I kind of understand what they're doing from a historic sort of archiving point of view, but let's be honest, people, unless you're really a hardcore programming geek, you're not going to want to sit and look at code. You want to play the games, and that's, to my mind, that's why MAME exists. I know that's probably the wrong reason, but that's why 99.99% of people enjoy MAME, is to play the games, and I'm one of them. So yeah, but any version of MAME that's come out in the last maybe 6 years, it doesn't save the high scores. But what you can do is you can actually take the source code of MAME, and there's a little program that you can actually run, and it basically patches MAME, so it does save the high scores. So Ian very kindly came across, patched it for me, and it means that all my high scores are now saved. I mean, apparently there was a lot of games when you switch the machine off at night, when the arcade owner turned all the power off to all these machines, the high scores were wiped. So for a game to save a high score, technically that's not accurate. So that's why games don't save scores. Some I noticed before Ian patched the thing, some of the games did save the high scores, like Robotron. Other games didn't, and I couldn't figure out why that was. It's probably because Robotron did save the scores on the real cabs, whereas other games didn't do it. But using this clever little patch thing, it now saves all high scores, which to my mind is what MAME's all about. Playing arcade games, it's all about high scores, isn't it? It's not about completing a game, it's all about high scores and not using continues. So thanks to Ian for that, I really appreciate that, mate. Right, the topic I've got to talk about, want to ask you guys what you think is, are you embarrassed about being a video gamer? Now I've touched on this subject before in the past. As I've mentioned before, I used to write for an online gaming magazine, Way of the Rodent. I wrote various articles for it, and one of them was basically about me being embarrassed as a video gamer. Now, when I think back to sort of when I first got into computers, I mean I would be about 17, 18 when I first got my computer. Now back then as a teenager, most guys were going to nightclubs, they were going to pubs, they were going out to get drunk, pool women, etc, etc, etc. And they looked upon video games as a childish pastime. It was for not babies, but it was for kids. They may have owned a Spectrum in 1983, but when they became 16, 17, they grew out of it. And for a lot of people, that's the way they see video games. It's a children's hobby. So yeah, when I was right into my video games. I mean, don't get me wrong, I used to go out, me and my mates, we used to go out to the pub and we would go to nightclubs and that kind of stuff. And I would never tell anybody that I still had, that I played computer games, purely and simply because I was embarrassed about it. An 18, 19-year-old playing video games is just unheard of, it's ridiculous. I mean, you need to remember, this is before your PlayStations and that kind of stuff. It was all 8-bit, so playing a Commodore 64, people would just laugh at you. The only time I would actually ever mention computer games was a couple of guys, their sons who were like 14, 15 years old. They'd mentioned to me about computers, and of course I told them I had a computer, and then we kind of set up a kind of swapping games. They would tell me the games their son was looking for, and I would tell them the games I was looking for. So I would do them copies of games and vice versa. But I said I would never mention video games to anybody because I was embarrassed about it. It was something that it was my hidden what do you call it? I can't remember the phrase I'm looking for. It's one of these things that I kept under guilty pleasures. That's the one. It was my guilty pleasure. I wouldn't talk about it, but I did it in secret. Even though, I mean, most of my mates, as I've touched on before in another video, most of my mates I met through computer games. So these guys knew I was a video gamer, but other people out with my sort of circle of friends, I wouldn't talk about it. I was quite embarrassed about it. But I said I could always remember when I worked at a company, and I must have gotten the subject about computers, and there was a guy, Bill, I'll for confidential reasons I'll not tell you his surname, not Bill Gates, but Bill must have been, I mean I would be mid-20s, Bill would be mid-40s, probably the age I am now, and Bill was a bespectacled, balding chap, and we happened to mention computer games, and it turns out that Bill was right into his, he had a Commodore 64 and he played all these games, and again, you know, it was something that him and I used to speak about, and we used to kind of swap games, etc. We used to do copies of games for each other, and it was never mentioned in front of anybody else because, again, I was quite embarrassed about being a gamer. But then there was one day I was in the accounts department, and back in the 80s, you know, things were different from what they are now. The accounts department, it was fully women. It was all women, older women, basically women of all ages. There's maybe about 10 of them, and I was in there one day doing some work, and there was one girl, Antoinette, who I had a bit of a thing for. This wee blonde, feisty, kind of Kylie Minogue lookalike type girl. She worked in the accounts, and I was sitting working away, and Bill came in, and you know, he was talking about some accounts or some invoices or something, and just as he was going out, he spotted me, and he shouted across to me. He goes, "Oh, Alan," he says, "I've got some tapes for you with some cracking games. I've got this new game by Ocean, blah 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 blah," and he started talking about these games, and I can remember just looking at him and going, "Oh my god," and I just skulked down in embarrassment because Antoinette was looking at me, and other people were looking at me, and I'm thinking, "Bill, shut the fuck up." I just wanted the ground to open up and swallow me up. So anyway, I kind of played it down, and Bill left, and then Antoinette said to me, you don't play computer games, do you? Or you don't play computer games, do you?" And I'm like, I got a Commodore. I got a computer when I was younger, but I never use it. But you know, Bill collects computer games, so that's what he's talking about. And I remember feeling really, really embarrassed about it, thinking that's me blowing my chances with Antoinette. It turns out I didn't. She still went out with me, so hey. But yeah, and in fact, the ironic thing is, Antoinette and I became girlfriend, boyfriend, and she actually, I remember playing her at match point, so you know, she didn't seem too bothered that I was a computer gamer. But anyway, yeah, so that was that. So I would never discuss computer games. And then a second defining moment in my life when it came to computer games and being embarrassed was when I decided I was going to get a Super Nintendo. And what did I have at that point? I think I had a Commodore Amiga, or I might have been without anything. I can't remember, but I wanted to get a Super Nintendo, and I remember going up to, what was the name of the shop? It was before Maplin's, but they called Tandy, I think it was called. They were basically a shop similar to Maplin's. They sold kind of like electronic components and sort of various electrical and electronic-y type sort of things. It was a right geek kind of type place, but they had this. They also sold video game consoles. So anyway, this day I went up into Tandy, and I was standing quite far back. I mean, again, I was quite embarrassed about even looking at them, but I was standing quite far back, sort of admiring them, you know, from afar. And the guy came up to me and says, "Oh, can I help you, sir?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm looking. It's my I didn't say my son. I think I said my nephew, which I don't have. My nephew's looking for one of these Nintendo Mega Drive things." I deliberately pretended I knew nothing about it, hence I was making up these stupid terms. "Oh, you mean, is it the Sega Mega Drive or the Super Nintendo you're looking for?" And I'm like, I think, I'm sure is it Mario or something it's called. He goes, "Oh yeah, that's the Super Nintendo you're looking for, sir." I says, yeah. Says, "How much is it?" "You know, it's £150, whatever." "Ah, right. So you interested in one?" I says, Aye. I said, "Can I have a look at it?" Deliberately playing dumb, so of course he brought the thing across, and he switched it on and he's showing me it, and I'm like, he says, "I can't, I'm too old for these finicky things." He says, "You know what kids are like, you know, them and their computers." So anyway, I proceeded to buy this Super Nintendo under the guise that it was for my non-existent nephew, and that's because I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed as I'll probably be at, what would I be, probably mid-20s, 25, 26. I was embarrassed that I played video games, I really was. So yeah. Things kind of, trying to think, I think when it became PCs, you know, the PCs came out, excuse me, you could kind of get away with it a bit more, because at the end of the day, PCs could be used for typing up your CV on Word. They could be used for doing spreadsheets. I mean, the internet didn't exist back then, so yeah, you kind of got away with it back then. But I think the defining moment for most gamers was when Sony released the PlayStation. That things changed. That's when video games went from being the sort of like the underground thing that people did in their bedroom, and it became this socially acceptable pastime. I mean, you know, I'm probably going over old ground, you know, but there was like, I mean, they brought out like Wipeout, which was an astonishing game. It had proper, the music was actually put together by proper bands. I think the Chemical Brothers was at Underworld and that kind of stuff. They all put various tracks out for this particular game. In fact, even some nightclubs apparently actually installed PlayStations in areas outside the sort of dance area of clubs, so that clubbers could go in, have a boogie, then when they wanted to go for a pish or come out for a wee while to get a break, they could fire up the PlayStation and play some Wipeout. So yeah, you know, Sony really changed. They changed video games from being this nerdy kind of pastime that only kids did, and it became a really mainstream, acceptable sort of hobby. And you know, now I don't have any problem at all about, you know, I'm a video gamer. I mean, Christ, I've got a YouTube channel that's basically anybody in the world can watch, proclaiming my love for video games. So yeah, there you go. I don't know what's changed. I don't know. It's just things have evolved, and it says it is now acceptable. Nobody, well, probably some people. I mean, I've got one of my mates. I mean, he said to me, "What is it you actually get out of playing video games?" And he says, they're shite. He says, I mean, he's got a PlayStation 3, I think it is, and he never plays it. He says that he tried to play, he bought FIFA, and he kind of got bored of it. You know, so I suppose like anything, I mean, football, I'm not a football fan. I mean, I've been watching the World Cup, you know, but I'm not what you would call a football fan. I mean, guys at my work will sit and talk about football, and they'll say to me, "Did you see the game last night?" And I'm like, no. Who was playing? What was the score? So yeah, I mean, it's one of these things. I do running. A lot of people probably hate running. You know, we've all got our hobbies and our crosses to bear. So I don't expect video games is going to be something that everybody's kind of going to buy into. But I certainly don't have a problem. I mean, I talk to people at work about my video games. You know, I talk about all the video systems I've got, so I've not got a problem now. But yeah, back in the day, I don't mind admitting, I felt embarrassed about it. Don't know why. I think it's because it says we were the first kind of generation to really, when video games first kicked in, we were there at the very start. So everybody sort of my age were into video games, but then as they got older, you know, girlfriends came onto the scene, they became 18, they could go and drink, whatever. Their hobbies changed, and a lot of them, you know, they left when they became 18, whatever. Video games was something that was just left behind. But there was obviously a certain group of people. Apologies about that, guys. I think the camera can only record up to 2 gig at one time, and then it switches off. What was I saying? Yeah, a lot of people, you know, when they turned of age, video games became something that they did as a kid, and they left it behind. But guys like you and I, we obviously, it gripped us. We got a taste for video games, and the love for video games has never left. I mean, here I am now. In fact, this actually kind of rolls on slightly onto one of the. It was a VR response to one of the guys asking about, are you too old to play video games? So yeah, that's kind of touching on what I'm talking about here. I mean, I'm talking about the embarrassment side of things. But yeah, here I am, 46 years old. Never had a bigger collection than I've got right now for video games, and I certainly don't see that ever changing. But no, I am 100% not embarrassed about being a video gamer. I was back in the 80s, 90s, absolutely. I felt really embarrassed about it. Don't know why, but I think it was just because it was deemed something that kids did, not grown men. So anyway, yeah, that's that. So be interesting to know your views, guys, when you were into video games as a kid, or not so much a kid, when you were older, you're in your 20s, 30s, were you embarrassed about telling people that you played video games? Let me know, post any comments down below, guys. That'd be really cool, and if anybody wants to do a sort of VR response and give me your thoughts and opinions on this subject, it would be really, really cool. So yeah, I think that's, I've probably spoke about everything that I want to speak about today, guys. What have I got coming up in the best Steve Benway fashion? Coming up next, a couple of things that I want to do, and again I mentioned this one a couple of weeks ago in one of my waffle things. Can I become a video game hero? Now what I'm planning to do with my main cab, I've got my little book, which again I'll show you. This bad boy, How to Master Video Games. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a game out of this. I'm going to pick one of the games that's in this thing. I'm going to play it for, you know, maybe a week or something, just me trying to improve at the game, and I'll post my scores, I'll give updates on my scores, how I'm getting on, what level I can reach, etc. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this How to Master Video Games on that particular game and see if it actually helps me improve my gaming skills. Be interesting to see if that does help. I mean, what I would utterly love to be able to do is to get to reach a sort of a standard at a game that I could proclaim to be, you know, I'm not saying a world record holder, but be really, really above average at a game. I mean, I have a few mates, I think I've mentioned before. I mean, my good mate Tony Temple, known Tony for a long, long time. Tony is the world record holder at Missile Command. I mean, he got himself, he bought Archer McLean's Missile Command cab off him maybe 5-6 years ago, and Tony just dedicated himself to playing this game, and he eventually took the world record. It's played on the championship settings, which basically means you don't get any extra lives or anything. It's just like you've got your 6 cities, the same number of lives, and you get as high a score as possible. Now Tony took the world record about maybe 4 years ago from a guy called Roy Schilt, who held the record since 1986. Now Roy Schilt is a bit of a enigmatic nutcase, typical American character. I'll not go into it anymore, but Google Roy Schilt Missile Command on YouTube and you'll see some funny videos. But anyway, yeah, Tony, he played Missile Command to such a level that he's the current world record holder. I've also got a mate, John Studley, who he's almost achieved the perfect Pac-Man score. He's got, I think he's got the 5th highest score ever at Pac-Man. I mean, he's right up there. He goes to a lot of these the sort of live events in the UK, and he goes for the kind of best score. But John's an absolutely awesome Pac-Man player. And I've also got another mate, Paul. Now through MAME, Paul actually was a world record holder at ER Kung Fu just by playing MAME. He submitted his score, he recorded it, submitted his score to Twin Galaxies, and he was recognised as being the world record holder at ER Kung Fu. So yeah, it's the kind of thing that, you know, anybody can do. I mean, you could pick some really obscure game that nobody plays, and technically you would be the world record holder. But now what I want to do is, I'm not saying I'm going to become a world record holder. I got off, bloody dog hairs floating about. What I'm going to do is pick a game and just see if following this book it makes a marked improvement in how good I am at the game. So that'll be interesting. And the very, very last thing, something that seems to be all the rage at the moment, and I mean I've made a video of it, are these bead art things. I mean, I've got a couple up there. I bought a few off, there's a really good guy down in Wales, Darren I think his name is. He makes bead art. I've bought 3 or 4 for my daughter Ava, and I've also bought a couple for myself. Excellent. The only thing is, they're quite expensive. Well, I mean, I'm saying they're expensive, you know, £9, whatever it is type thing. But I've realised that you can pick up beads, Hobbycraft, do a bucket of 10,000 beads for £5. And so all you need is a bucket, you need one of these, a big bucket of beads. You get papers which you use what you call it, you get boards which you basically put the pegs onto, and then you get these paper things that you lay across the beads once you're finished, and you iron it together, and it basically gels the thing together. So yeah, I'm going to get a big bucket of these beads, and I'm going to have a wee crack at making a few kind of sprites from video games. So that'll be interesting. I'll post my results unless they're shite, in which case I won't post them. So anyway guys, listen, as usual, appreciate you watching. Always welcome any comments. It says if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and it says if you like what you see, I'd appreciate if you could maybe consider subscribing. And as usual guys, thanks for watching.